Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This is John with Tommy's Top Picks, here to bring you, well, another market news segment. I'm not sure what to call this, 2.0 and what's happening in the world. Whatever. We're going to crack this nice box of Uprising. Looking forward to doing this. I love Uprising. It is very fun to open. I think they did a great job on this product, by the way. I know the market is what the market is, but just think about how opening this works. Wow, I can't even get it open. How this works versus getting, say, Everfest, where your best cold foil, which was in a lot of boxes, was one of those items. And then in this, your worst is kind of like cold foil common equipment, which isn't too bad because you had that also in Everfest. So pretty good. Slippery packs are still slippery. Yeah, so let's just dive into what's happening in the marketplace, generally speaking. You are seeing 2.0 come into an effect. I'm actually very intrigued about how the prices are developing. A per box price is $67, is ridiculously low and below map. Shouldn't be allowed to be sold. And the case is at $3.18, so super, super low. I take that to mean that the economic conditions for shops is bad, right? Because they're basically breaking the rules, saying, I don't care if you kick me off distribution. So it's a bad situation for the shops. I feel really terrible about that being the case, but it is what it is in an economy like this. Games and fun start to go by the wayside in order for people to be able to pay for life expenses that are just more important. I hope that's not you out there. I hope you're getting along okay and everything's all right, and I hope you can continue to enjoy the things you enjoy, but in the meantime I'll just keep giving you the news as I see it, sharing you the data that I see. Interesting factor, and I think this bodes well for 2.0, the cold foils of the highest demand gear equipment, right, and the Fable as well, are so basically the high-end collectible, high-end, high-use cold foils are all starting to reverse. So up until now, everything's kind of been in free fall, which is very standard. Box releases come out, everyone opens boxes, there's a ton flooding the market. Slowly, prices stabilize, reverse back to a mean. Well, it has started to happen very quickly for some of the collectible items that are the high-end stuff. So I'm talking Crown of Providence, Flamescale Furnace, the Fable, Blood of Drakai, the Shukos, the Tiger, what are they called? The Tiger Claws, what are they called? You know what I'm talking about, the Ninja Claws. Ooh, nice little hex cold foil hex. I love that. So I think that's it on the ones that are starting to see reverses. Oh, no, that's not true. The Tumultai Marvel, a collectible one, and the Dominia, and maybe even the other one. Optimi. Yeah, Optimi. Yeah, I believe all of those, and I could be wrong on this, so double check the data, have started to reverse from the free fall. So that is to say that the price has been coming down steadily over the last week or two, since release, basically week and a half, and it's been a very steady fall over the course as more supply hits the markets, and for the first time ever we're starting to see something different, and that is we're seeing it go up. So it kind of hit a bottom, it's bouncing. I don't actually think this is over yet. I don't think that's really the bottom, but I think it's that initial oh my god, I gotta get one bottom, if you will. So collector heavy side of it, because these are all the collectible pieces, and maybe a little bit of speculation on it, thinking that maybe this is the bottom, jump in, and then people see other people jumping in, so then they jump in, that sort of thing. I do expect it to continue to decline over time, but we may see a temporary relief rally, is kind of the market term for it, for investing in sort of a general market. So this may be a relief rally, give a little bit of an upward pressure on those items. I myself am personally holding off on going in on them heavily. I am starting to pick up the lighter weight dragons because they have not seen that reversal in the Marvel format, and I'm trading for stuff too, so where I have extras, etc., with my local people. But from the collector's perspective, I think I'm going to be a little bit smarter with Uprising than I was with Everfest. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. If you think about it, can you imagine 3-4 months from now when everyone's bored, changing up what's going to happen, the new sets getting hyped, et cetera, et cetera? Do you think people are going to be charging the same price for some of these collectibles? Some of them, yeah. Probably the Fable. I could see that holding up pretty steadily. I was wrong last time, though. I thought the Fable would stay at, I think, 400 is what I called, and it ended up down 3 or less, the cold foil version. So you got to realize that there's this like doldrum period that happens post release by quite a bit, which is the best time to pick this up. Obviously, there is an exception to that. If you need these things for your competitive scene, you can do that. But that's kind of what the non-cold foils are for, right? That's what the whole design space is, and that's why those are a lot cheaper and there's a lot more of them. That said, I am keeping an eye on the less exciting cold foils, such as Coronet Peak, Ghostly Touch, and Constellus. They're all continuing on this decline, so I might pick them up on their quote-unquote relief rally just because they're getting into a very reasonable range. So I might as well just grab them. I don't really care about trying to maximize the bottom. You can't really call all the bottoms. But for the bigger stuff, the stuff that's going to cost me like 100 plus, I'm going to try to get my best price on them, I think. So I'm going to be patient with it. I have no drive or need to get that done immediately, so I don't mind pushing on that a little bit faster and or a little bit slower and just letting it ride as is. Yeah, I can't think of any exception. There's nothing really that's like super dire for me. Maybe if I'm playing Icelander, maybe like move on Coronet Peak faster. I do have a rainbow foil version of Constellus, the Wizard Robe, so I don't really need that immediately. And since I don't have a Coronet Peak, I might as well just buy the one that I want eventually. So I might get that in cold foil first, just because I would actually use that. I'm not playing Ninja or Dromai right now, so I don't really need a piece of that gear yet. So I'm not too worried about it. I think I even have a Crown of Providence rainbow foil as well. So like I'm in a pretty good spot. I don't need to like jump on anything too quickly. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to be patient, and I recommend other people do the same because week over week, the prices of the boxes alone have come down. So those collectible things should theoretically continue to fall if people are just cracking more boxes because they're so freaking cheap. Question is, are people cracking boxes? There's definitely a lot of mass box openings on day one, but since then I think that flow has slowed a little bit, and that will give us a chance to get some good deals. I actually think I'm going to buy another case before too long, just to take advantage of these really low prices and maybe open my Rudy case, because everyone who got a Rudy case within my cohort, my group, they all got real fire in their cases. So I'm hoping I get some lucky pools or something out of that. Maybe make some money back. We'll see. It's just it's totally a gambler thing. It's nothing serious, just for fun. So let's move on now that we're probably about halfway through the amount of material here. Let's go ahead and talk about the economic stuff. So if you're bored with my economic ranting, go ahead and tune it out. Nothing exciting to report. Just going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the economic space and give you some heads up on news there. Obviously, nothing I say is financial advice. Do what you will with it. I'm a dude that plays with cardboard, and I like examining finance. So unemployment is still holding up. We just got an unemployment report. Employment is still holding up. We just got a unemployment report last week, or I guess they call it an employment report, not last week, earlier this week, and the jobs growth was high. I think it was like 250,000 jobs or something like that was added to the economy, which is pretty significant because when things cool off and slow down or in expectation of recession, typically jobs get cut, and therefore that number comes down. Like they're still growing, but it will come down to lower. This was higher than expected by quite a margin. So that is an interesting piece of data. It's not an end-all be-all to there's no recession going to happen, which we still haven't gotten the official word on that yet. But it does indicate some strength is hanging on in particular sectors. Now, if you dig into the data a bit, some people were saying it's temp work, summer jobs, ice cream parlors, etc., stuff like that, kids from college, those kind of jobs. I can't report specifically on that, but that's what I heard. It's worth noting that could be part of what's keeping the employment rating so high. So we'll see what happens with that. That will change the way a recession plays out. If we have high employment but still a recession, that would be a very weird time. Inflation number is expected to come out tomorrow. So today, by the time you're watching this, I think it's expected to be 8.8%. Something to note on that: if you are essentially at a job and you get a raise and it's less than, we'll call it 7%, because that's the CPI, Consumer Price Index value, that means you are getting a reduction in pay. So 7% increase in inflation every year. If you're not getting at least a 7% increase at the job you're working at, or by switching jobs, then you're falling behind, because you're basically going to have to pay more for every item that you would buy. And so you got to keep that in mind. Inflation is still high, still growing high. And I think it's interesting. There's this factor that comes to play in this. And this is a research paper I read some time ago by Vanguard. It showed there's a correlation or tie between productivity of employees and the availability of silicon chips. So the concept is, the more you computerize, the more effective people can be, and this goes across industries. Initially it was very minimal, as in certain spaces, word processing, etc., accounting. Now you can see computers are used for everything, including making this content, etc. The more chips there are that are involved in productive work, either making content, doing accounting, drawing CAD pictures, they touch everything, right? Then the more productive they end up being. There's Moore's Law, which essentially says that every 18 months, the price of silicon chips will drop by half and their power will increase by double. It started out as, I think, every 12 months, increased to every 18 months or so, and we are slowing down on Moore's Law. So that productivity spike that we saw as a result of computerization of the economy is slowing. But generally speaking, that has held. And what that does is it creates a deflationary force on the overall economy. And when that happens, what ends up happening is it's almost better to save than it is to spend. It creates a very difficult time creating any inflation. And you got to, via Marvel. Nice. That's gorgeous. Love it. Got some good cool foils in this box. What was I talking about? Uvia. Yeah. Inflation. Computational economics. So more processing power creates a deflationary, not spiral, but pressure on the economy. What that means is, if you save your money, what you buy tomorrow, you'll get more of, because the prices will come down, which is typically been true since about the 80s, 90s or so, when computers started entering the broader economy and spreading. It's one of the reasons inflation has had the Fed has had such a hard time hitting the 2% growth rate, because we basically haven't had any inflationary pressure for a long, long time. Productivity was increasing at an efficient rate, similar to Moore's Law. And this paper essentially says that there's a direct tie between microchip extension into the economy and inflation. And so it had a pretty strong argument. I think it was valid. I think we saw a lot of it. Interesting thing, I don't know if you guys know, but last year during the pandemic, due to supply chain disruptions, you probably do know, because you're on a computer listening to YouTube or on a phone, so you probably heard about how it was hard to get phones and cars and new graphics cards and computers, because microchips were very hard to come by. Microchips were hard to come by because the logistics got messed up in the way it was all moved through China and the various places that they're produced. And so what it ended up happening was you couldn't get any of these things. And it's notable that this paper theorized that there's a connection between inflation and microchip proliferation. And sure enough, the second microchip proliferation gets disrupted, we have massive inflation spike. Now, I want to be very clear. It's not the only factor. There's a ton of other factors that came into it, including those logistics disruptions and core materials that tied into it. You're thinking lumber, oil, etc., right? The Ukraine war messed up oil and gas supplies to Europe, would put a bigger demand on oil and gas globally, essentially. And when that happens, what ends up happening is that the whole supply chain across the globe constricts, essentially. There's just not enough gas to go around at the prices that were expected. When you have unexpected price fluctuations, you end up getting unexpected consequences and ripple effects, which is what ends up happening. And that ends up affecting things like logistics, because you got to think every truck that moves goods around uses gas, oil, etc. So they end up slowing down and having a hard time. I'm just going to ramble here for a bit, and I know we're done with the box, but and this was an awesome box. But I'm just going to ramble a little bit. If you're bored, go ahead and turn it off. But essentially, when you see these logistics disruptions occur, rippling through the economy, they can slow down key components to the economy. There's all these pieces. So you can think of it a little bit like an ecosystem, where you have key species that keep a whole ecosystem together. One type of bug disappears, it doesn't affect anything. But a specific bug that multiple parts of the ecosystem rely upon disappears, suddenly the whole ecosystem can collapse. You have a massive disruption of the entire thing, and it gets all out of whack. Economies are very much the same. What happens is there's these key components and commodities that tie into it, and when they get disrupted, it has an impact on broader components, and it ripples out in a chaotic way. It's very much based on, supply, demand, who's able to purchase when, and basically how much cash they have on hand to do so, which is where that saying "cash is king" comes from. At this point, we have kind of gone over the hump, and I think we'll see more of this coming up. It kind of ties into my conversation last week about the whole idea of the downturn is over before people realize it, right? Or the recession. So as we go over this hump, what you'll see is some of this stuff sorting out. And I don't know if you paid attention, but GPU prices are dropping. In China, they were just selling brand new, I think they were, a 3080 Ti's, whatever the brand new, super fancy GTX graphics card was selling 30% under MSRP. 30%. It's a third of the price they need to make everyone make money that's involved in the supply chain of getting that graphics card to a consumer. So we're talking the stores need that MSRP number so that they make their margin, and then the producers and the shippers and distributors and all that stuff, right? They all get a piece in that chain. When you're 30% under MSRP, that means everyone takes a third of a haircut on whatever amount they would get. So the local retailer, we'll say, gets like 10%. That means they are only getting 7%. And, it hits everyone in the same way. And so, well, actually, that's not true. It hits different people in different ways. I won't go into the details of how that actually works, but it doesn't hit everyone the same. Some people have an advantage in that situation. But anyways, point being is that when that happens, there's a hard effect. So bringing it back to cardboard. We've obviously heard multiple times, Tommy and I have talked about the cardboard shortages and challenges with logistics, late releases such as Uprising in the US, getting things across the country from ports, very challenging, and the effects of high oil prices causing that, certain components for forklifts causing that, right? These all play out into ways that create delays and disruptions in the supply chain as a whole. And what you start to see is that you get this uneven distribution of success and failure, or, good quality of service to consumers and bad quality of service to consumers. And what ends up happening is people get mad, things get disrupted. Sometimes it can topple whole empires. And this has happened actually, like historically, if you look back to like late Roman period, and there's a bunch of different examples of it, but essentially when you see these massive interlinking economic structures start to get these ripple effects that shake them, and then they get hit with another ripple effect and it shakes them, and another ripple effect and it starts to shake them apart. When those things start to break apart, the power dynamics shift, and there's voids in power which are filled often by people that are opportunistic and faster acting than the entrenched players. And so what you end up having is, and this isn't what I'm talking about happening in the US or anything, but maybe in the cardboard world, we'll say, what ends up happening is those entrenched interests, the power players that have been doing it for a long time, have all the right connections, all the right things. Well, they're so used to everything working within a certain margin of error that when it doesn't anymore, they have a hard time adapting. And so what you'll see is the entrenched players get disrupted and the new players come in. In fact, Silicon Valley's entire business thesis is to disrupt entrenched models, and they look for these opportunities in very aggressive ways using computational economics, essentially affecting an inborn industry or ingrained industry with computational impact. Think Uber overcoming taxis, right? Airbnb overcoming hotels, right? It's using computing and connectivity to overcome an old business model that always worked one way, and the old business model has no real motivation to change until it's almost too late. And you can see how Netflix took out oh God, what was that? what's the video store? God, I can't even think of it anymore. You guys know which one I'm talking about. I think there's only one left in the U.S. Whatever, the place that smells like popcorn and you would rent your movies for the weekend. Netflix took them out. Had the opportunity to buy them, said, no, we don't need to. All of a sudden, Netflix dominates and they're gone. They're gone. Blockbusters, that's it. So this happens again and again. All this bringing back once again to cardboard, massive disruption, supply chain concerns, and issues. And you start to look at what happens in these other industries as potentially happening here. Does that mean we have things like Pokemons and Magic the Gathering under threat? At this point, I would say no. I think they have navigated it pretty well. I think Pokemon made some very strong strategic moves of buying a printer, and then when they started having disruptions, so they can control their supply chain a lot better. It's called vertical integration, and they essentially did a good job with it. And now they're able to control exactly how the supply hits the street and what impact that has on secondary market prices. The reality is that may have been a mistake in the timing because it took them a while to close that deal and get it ramped up and active. And now we're seeing a downturn in the demand side. So their supply is under control, but the demand, they really can't control that unless they do some hype stuff where they're releasing Charmanders every set or something. You know what I mean? And I don't know Pokemon very well, but that's a factor. Now, the good thing on Pokemon's side is they're an empire much bigger than their card space, so it doesn't really matter. They can absorb a loss that's taken by over investing in that particular component of supply. Magic is similar. It's part of Hasbro, although Magic seems to be a core economic engine for Hasbro. So if they end up with a similar disruption set, which they did not buy a printer as far as I know, they are just kind of weathering it and saying, sorry, this is going to be late. Unset's going to be later in the year. Was that the Secret Lair double-sided, oh God, what was it called? Double face or something like that. It was the first Commander deck that they put out. Well, an email just popped yesterday where they said, we're so sorry this has been delayed by so long. We're going to give you 2 collector packs of Kamigawa as a thank you for sticking with us. So, and I only know that because I bought one of those. I thought it was really cool to see the first Secret Lair Commander deck. Point being, these disruptions are happening at various levels, at various points, and in various parts. So far, it has not affected core business yet, so I don't see Empire shaking. But you get a few of these, and then you get a few more, you get a few more. And who knows where COVID's going? Who knows where Ukrainian war is going? Who knows? There's lots of things going on in the world that can be chaotic and cause disruptions in supply chains and logistics in a global world that could shake things economically in a way that does ultimately have the impacts that change the fates of entire companies, countries, etc. It's happened many times in the past under industries and nations and empires. There's no reason to expect it not to happen again. Just trying to time win is impossible. Don't bet on tomorrow Magic's going out of business. That's absurd. That's not happening. But in the next 10 years, is Magic as big as it used to be? Say COVID continues to do these big cycles where they take out part of Chinese manufacturing because they keep doing lockdowns over there, and then that has issues and impacts on lumber and da-da-da-da. So it's all these, these side effects. It could have an impact where a smaller, more agile company has the ability to find different sources, print at different volumes because they don't have to print as much. Magic has a global following. So they need a lot of supply to do anything. You got to see. Now, I'm not betting against Magic, man. I'll tell you that. I am all in on Magic. I'm all in on Flesh and Blood. I'm a little bit in on Pokemon, not just because I don't believe in it, just because I don't understand it. I think this stuff is around. I think there's a lot of drive for it. There's a lot of nostalgia around it. So I just wanted to point that out, kind of talk through that, how these impacts ripple out and what you're seeing in the world. ultimately what this means is suppressed demand catching up supply equals in lack of equilibrium in pricing, which is what puts downward pressures on the entire cardboard industry. And we're seeing it. And we're seeing it across the board. And Fab is getting hit pretty hard with it right now. I think they adjusted correctly with 2.0 so far. We'll see how it plays for the rest of the way because, again, the collectible stuff is still holding up surprisingly while their boxes are dropping like a freaking rock, which is crazy. But you look at that in the context of the global thing we just talked about, and it's like, okay, that kind of does make sense because you're talking about supply pressures, not really demand pressures. The demand is there for the fancy schmancy stuff, the people that have the extra cash to spend on the collectibles. But the individual boxes, less supply. You don't get the gambler premium as much because there just isn't as many gamblers available. Does that all make sense? I sure hope so. Well, that's it for my ramble today. I kind of went way over, but I hope you enjoyed this box opening and this random ramble of, 2.0 and economic news. I'll try to keep them up. Press that like button if you liked it. Leave a comment if I can do something better or if you think it was crazy or awesome or I should shut up or ramble less, whatever. And subscribe if you like our content. And until next time, have a good one.